Greetings. So we're gonna go ahead and do a quick reading on or from the Light Eaters book. I am jumping all around, mostly because that's just the way I am. We're gonna start with chapter 7. So we will go back. I will cover the areas that I have not covered yet. However, as I'm reading, there's some things I just want to kind of put out there as I'm reading it, so it's more of a real-time effect. All right, conversations with animals. In Semiosis, Sue Burke's 2018 sci-fi novel, plants are central characters. A group of humans have flown through space to escape a war, and climate change ravaged Earth to land on a verdant planet, which they name Pax. They've come to start humanity over with a different orientation toward the natural world, with ecology not against it. They immediately find this means becoming differential servants to the will of Pax's plants. On Earth, plants can count. They can see, they can move, they can produce insecticides when the wrong insect comes in contact with them, says Octavio, the colony's botanist. On Pat, plants have even longer to evolve. One plant kills several of the colony members when they encroach too far. It sabotages their grain fields. Here, plants seem to be able to strategically plan ahead. The humans decide that their only chance for survival is to position themselves at the disposal of a particularly powerful vine plant. We will work for it, not the other way around, Octavio says. It will help us only because it's helping itself. In a reversal of earthy roles, humans become the servile mercenaries of warring plants. Several human generations later, when another plant species attacks the humans, the vine suggests ways to neutralize the threat. Without killing them. A Pax precept is a peaceful coexistence. Mutualism can be coerced. The vine says, while contemplating injecting its fruits with superfacients to disarm the invaders. In essence, we will conscript a symbiote. So never mind. The humans respond with stunned silence. The vine adds encouragement. This is often done by plants to animals. By now, I'd learned from Rick Carvan and his sagebrush about plant-to-plant communication, the elaborate exchange of chemical signals that warn other plants about impending threats. I understood that this quiet speech was everywhere, passing easily beneath our perception, a form of communication requiring neither sound nor movement. A world of meaning was adrift on the air, yet for the most part, the study of plant-to-plant communication seemed to focus mostly on alarm calls, who warned who and when. This made sense. Preparing for an attack is crucial to survival. But with this much power to transmit meaning, warnings couldn't be the only thing being passed around, I thought. There has to be more to plant communication than alarm calls. This, I learned, was apt. There was much more being discussed. But what I didn't consider until I came across it was that plants hardly kept the dialogue to their own kind. They regularly crossed the species divide. Indeed, the relationships plants have with other plant species and even with animals is a tapestry of dynamics that run the gamut from reciprocal to exquisitely antagonistic. Often it is hard to tell the difference. The field that studies this is flatly called biocommunication, but this seems too tidy for the complicated pile of interspecies relationships being uncovered today. As I fall into the world of biocommunication, I get the sense that the rule of life is an unruly mixture. Everything, it seems, is impacting and altering everything else. I'm reminded of a phrase used by theorist Donna Haraway, who writes that our lives, whether we notice it or not, are the rich wallow in multi-species muddles. Consuelo de Moraes, I probably just butchered your name, sir. Consuelo de Moraes, the ecologist who discovered how dodder vines select their prey, lives squarely inside the muddle. She sits on the edge. Interesting, I'm keeping these. Okay. This is cranberry in the upright. You got the button mushroom in the upright. You're just over here knocking stuff over, huh? We've got ginkgo biloba and plantain in reverse. So I'm guessing plantain is the top of the reading. Since it's the only one in reverse, I'm going to take it that way, and I don't really know how they fill out. Yeah, okay. Consuelo de Moraes, the ecologist who discovered how dodder vines select their prey, lives squarely inside the muddle. She sits on the edge and watches, squinting, as species upon species interact. In fact, she seems preternaturally attuned to seeing meaningful intersections where scientists before have seen absolutely nothing. She's a strictly scientific kind of person, and there's a no-nonsense clarity to her speech. She won't tell me anything she isn't sure that she can replicate or doesn't feel confident will make it past peer review. But she also feels capable of wonder. In fact, uses it as a primary research tool. Her sense of rigor makes her dispatches from the world of multi-species muddles feel reliable and all the more gobsmacking for it. Dr. Moraes speaks to me from across her desk at the Department of Environmental System Science at ETH Zurich, where she is silhouetted by a gallery wall of butterflies pinned inside square picture frames. These are the adult forms of the caterpillar she studies. The sentinel came out. So I'm just going to start laying them down. I'll take that one as the top of the read. Yeah, she specializes in insects, plants, and viruses that often layer their lives upon one another in ornate ways. For example, in the 1990s, she was studying the triangle of drama between corn, caterpillars, and wasps. First, a caterpillar chews a corn plant. The plant notices this and samples the combination of saliva and regurgitant the caterpillar leaves behind on its leaves. Now the plant knows the caterpillar species, or at least which kind of species wasps it needs to parasitize it. This is the green mate. It's like having a green thumb. Or like with a mask on, knowing how to attract your predator, another kind of predator that's going to eat your primary predator. The plant then releases a finely tuned chemical gas. Within an hour, the correct wasps arrive. The wasps, no doubt, the green witch fell out, appreciative of the ideal scene before them, insert their needle-like appendages into the caterpillar's bodies, injecting their eggs inside of them. When the eggs hatch, the wasp larvae use their especially oversized mandibles to eat the caterpillars from the inside out. Now, if you think that like Dreamcatcher was a scary, movie to watch, that's kind of, there's like an alien busting its way, eating its way out of your body. Just saying. Some of the most gruesome things can be learned from nature, right? They then spin their tic-tac shaped cocoons, which they glue to the emptied husk of their caterpillar. Ugh. The result is a green, wormish form bristling with white silky spines like hedgehog quills made of felt. And thus the plant attempts to save itself. De Moraes discovered this behavior in corn, tobacco, and cotton in 1998. 2 decades later, De Moraes noticed little bite marks in the leaves of some black mustard plants she was growing in a greenhouse. There's a silent one. The green man is at the top of the reading. For the plants, it was parsley in reverse at the top of the reading. So we'll go over this again when I get done, but just wanted to show you what's coming out. I'm also going to put some mix and match just to have more of a storyline. Okay, so 2 decades later, De Moraes noticed little bite marks on the leaves of some black mustard plants that was growing inside a greenhouse. The marks look like tiny crescent moons. Always a tell for a bumblebee mouth. But why were bumblebees biting plants? She kept watching. The bumblebees, she realized, were starving. They'd been flying around the closed buds of mustard flowers for days, but no bloom had yet opened. If they didn't slip their tongues in a pool of sugary flower water soon, they would begin to slow down, their bodies desperately trying to conserve calories. Eventually, they would land on the dirt, crawl a while, and die. The poor bees, their timing was all wrong. The flowers weren't due to open for another month. It wouldn't do. The bees she saw began to bite the plant's leaves. The next day, the flowers bloomed. The bees drank the nectar and survived. Interesting, Desmarais thought. Bees don't eat leaves. There seemed to be no good reason to waste precious energy on something that wouldn't feed them. But here they were, biting them regardless. There were moons all over the place. Someone must have noticed this before, she thought. And then you do this literature search, and it's like, how did they miss this? She set up an experiment with all the proper controls and found that bees biting plants made their flowers bloom as much as 30 days earlier than they otherwise would have. So coming out of the cave, that's like the top of the read there. Obviously, the bees benefit here, but Consuelo found so do the plants. They bloom in time to have bees around to pollinate them. Timing in nature is like that. All species rely on other species in one way or another. If they're out of sync, everyone loses. Survival depends on having a way to communicate across the species divide. One of my students sent me a photo of her spinach salad with these half-moon shapes, Demora said. We would look for it before, we would never look for it before, and now we're looking around and going, oh my God, bee damage. After you know, your mind starts seeing the thing all the time. Yeah, it's like your mind gets married to a specific idea. It's like if you're looking for something, then you'll find it, right? Common bumblebees she found can tell at a distance whether a yellow monkey flower will have lots of pollen for them or not by the scent of a certain floral volatile compound that translates in a bee's brain to heaps of pollen. But making heaps of pollen takes a lot of resources, so the monkey flower has developed a shortcut. It recognizes the rules of this pre-screening process, and instead of making extra pollen, will exude the volatile anyway. In essence, it will lie. The bumblebee, now duped, will arrive to disappointment. Either way, the monkey flower got what it wanted. A bumblebee to dust with pollen. The monkey flower is an excellent liar. With biocommunication, it's monkey flowers all the way down, DeMoris talks about. The arms race of insects, plants, and viruses, each outsmarting the other and being outsmarted at turns. Everybody is trying to survive, all of them. Okay, so this is actually in reverse, but whatever. This is the top of the reading. I just wanted to see what else was with it. So we'll put the witch back and just stick with the queen for right now. She often laughs as she explains her findings, as if experiencing her own amazement at the results all over again. I get the sense she isn't as wedded to this vision of nature as a battlefield, but it's a metaphor near at hand in all the sciences since Darwin, so she uses it. A few years ago, when her graduate student saw a plant he liked in a greenhouse at a botanical garden in Zurich, he brought a few seeds back to Demore's lab. They grew them out and admired the plant's dark purple stems, which were covered in thorns, an inch long each. The spikes totally eclipsed its diminutive yellow flowers in size. Okay, so this is literally like a lizard is nothing to a dragon. For playing compare and contrast, right? Every part of it was poisonous to humans. The plant's common name was purple devil and malevolent. They put young caterpillars on them just to see what would happen. A short while later, they noticed globules of something sticky clinging to the devil's plant stem. They were perfectly glowing spheres of sugar. Yeah. Like dew. Like the morning dew on leaves. Yeah, okay. They were perfectly glowing spheres of sugar like dew sitting on a lady's mantle at dawn. Extra floral nectar, meaning nectar found outside the flower, is not unusual in plants. Typically, it's there to attract a sugar-eating animal that could help the plant in some way. They kept watching the caterpillars. They were indeed lured by the sugar spheres. But caterpillars don't help plants, they eat them. All of a sudden, something was wrong with their mouths. Their tiny, hinge-like mandibles were stuck around the globules as though it was with glue. It's like if you have taffy in your mouth, De Morales said. The baby caterpillars waved their heads back and forth, trying to clean out the substance. It was a feeble attempt without arms that reached their mouths, but there was little that they could do. The perfect globes of sugar were a trap. Try to swallow one and never open your mouth again. Lately, she'd been working on goldenrod. Goldenrod, with their tall ability to fix nitrogen, varies widely. The legume monitors the symbiotes living in each of its nodules, making sure they keep their side of the bargain, demanding a one-to-one exchange. If the plant catches bacteria free riding, it punishes the delinquent bacteria by choking off the oxygen supply to that specific nodule. The legume arrangement seems like a straightforward case of a transaction between organisms, with a little mischief and punishment thrown in, but other interspecies relationships can be trickier to parse. Coercion, in particular, is difficult to determine in a biological system. Who says that the other party is being coerced and not willingly playing along? What looks like coercion to us could have other connotations for the individuals involved. One case is that of a group of orchids that biologists called sexually deceptive. These orchids are a brilliant example of how finely tuned plants' grasp of biochemistry can be. Plants are geniuses at synthesizing chemical compounds. They seem to be able to make whatever chemical mixture is necessary to the task at hand, excreting them as gases through their pores or sometimes through their roots to infuse the soil. Their precision and aptitude for this is beyond any other organism, and it's fair to say it constitutes a completely additional sense that continues to shock researchers on a regular basis. With each new advancement of gas sampling tools, the picture widens. More subtle and specific chemical inventions come into view. It is a foregone conclusion that plants produce far more complex compounds than our instruments can sense. But back to the orchids. In Australia, evolutionary biologist Rod Peakall spent more than 30 years studying the several groups of orchids convinced wasps to try to have sex with them. The point of this was to coat the wasps in their pollen, which is to say, in order to have plant sex. The plant pantomimed wasp sex, and the wasp unwittingly had plant sex. It's like literally cross-species coercion. Yeah. Or thinking that you're copulating with a specific type of person when you're really copulating with a totally different type of alien, right? The mechanics are a little complicated, but perhaps nothing else we know of shows just how intimately evolved plants can get in other species' lives. So we will try our best to imagine it. I think I'm going to stop there. This is on end of page 144. My cat has just plopped herself there and seems happy, so I'm going to let her sit there. I am going to talk about this reading, though. So while we were reading these, this is what came out. At the top of the read, we've got plantain in the reverse. It says useful remedy for coughs and inflammation. So I feel like something is not being blown out of proportion. It's just literally maybe this is a sentinel. So I know that it looks like the sphinx or perhaps like a cat of some type, right? But what it says is new opportunities shall manifest in unexpected ways. So that's what I'm going to refer to when I'm talking about plants, because when you're thinking of interspecies relations, let alone the way that other species are prepared to attack, a cat would have no clue how to ward off or get rid of like an entire colony of ants, right? That are just completely on top of it, starting to bite it 1,000 times, devour it, scorpions, whole bunches of insects that can get like on cats, mites, ticks, all that. My point is, these big old teeth mean nothing if it comes down to like tiny little ideas, like spider cues when you type in a search box. If a cat has no defenses against that, their primary sense is, a gazelle, just so you know, is typically considered prey. A prey animal is usually an animal that has an eye located or that looks one direction and one eye that looks the other. They don't look forward. Predators typically have two eyes that look forward or face forward, and that's better depth perception for the attack, right? However, this is the kind of perception, the antennas that the Sentinel has. It's the same thing that Neo and Trinity are aware of coming out of the Matrix, right? They've got it's the sixth sense kind of fifth element associated with knowing where one is associated or one resides within an energetic field. There's that queen energy. It's knowing how to cue the sentinels or don't cue the sentinels. Don't trigger them or trigger them completely. You can't really plant people into, like, the Mr. Andersons, how they would reproduce. Like, so there's like 50 Mr. Andersons, and then there's a whole bunch of, I don't know what they look like, I guess, yeah, sentinels that are being released from the entire world, descending on Trinity and Neo, right? That was kind of that's the idea of this. Is at the very beginning they were talking about the planet Pax, and how on Pax you had to figure out how to either become best friends with this huge snake that is able to crush the earth and just that vine, or it's eat or be eaten. Still the same thing, but rather than us thinking of plants and animals as servile or as serving us, there's a need to understand this dynamic here. Oops, sorry, this isn't upright. So what is a lizard to a dragon? That's what this is. That's a dragon wrapped around the entire earth, right? Where it's a snake, the Gnostic snake. What is a dragon to a snake? All of these things are part of, like, you could look deep into the middle of space and you probably would find the same. That's what I'm saying about Pax. It's not from this planet. On a different star, in a different star system, these would be the options. You can either be the dragon, you can be the lizard, or you can be the snake. And it is up to you to decide which one is going to help you to survive. Okay? We'll put it like that. Here is the entire species. Here are all the different types of fun people that you could become, right? Fungi. Never mind, whatever. Fungi. Stupid joke. Anyway, in this specific case, that you can't really say that any of them are going to bury the other for sure. Any of these in a large enough form, maybe there's like a tiny little dragon, and then there's a huge one. Maybe there's tiny lizards, and then there's like kimono dragons, right? There are tiny little garden snakes, and then there's boa constrictors and anacondas. You know what I'm saying? You got to decide for yourself how to water your own garden and what's buried underneath, so that you've got the edge, so that you've understood for yourself your strengths and weaknesses as they pertain to other atmospheres, right? I'm going to just put the snake back at the bottom of the deck there. The second pile here, we had the button come out. It says can be sauteed, sliced, or cooked in almost any way. So this is like regular mushrooms that we would buy at the grocery store. So we've got cranberry, which is number 4, and then number 6 in the upright. And that's the wedding. Remember, she was talking about not being so attached to the idea of combat in the field, but more so being able to find valuable pieces of information amongst it. That's finding the edibles I'm hearing. So if you were looking through this many different types of mushrooms, which is the variety of reptile life that you might find on packs, just for as a wild example, right? This is knowing which mushrooms you can eat and which ones you cannot. It is understanding who Morpheus and the Oracle are, when to trust somebody using discernment and within the matrix versus knowing that it's a Mr. Anderson or that you just paged every sentinel that's out there. Know your edible foods, know which ones to commit to. And this green witch that came out, the whole green witch movement in this entire thing came out when they were talking about the wasps actually injecting caterpillars, the very hungry caterpillars, with their own eggs. Okay, you're not going to see that coming. It's kind of like being a very diligent gardener with a extraordinarily green thumb. It is the understanding that on packs, the plants actually have developed a hierarchy for survival, not because they had to, but because that's just the way that plant life evolved both on Earth and in packs. They didn't have like a main species. I always think about how sharks get criminalized just because of the way they eat. Like they don't have hands. What did you want them to do? Like reach out and grab something before they eat it? They kind of do that. They kind of do bump their prey from underneath and then they attack just to get a feel for what's going to happen, you know? This is testing the waters. You don't actually have to test the waters if you already know, okay, well, this is the field that I'm going into right now. If this is the shark going into the field, you no longer need this part. If you already know what is edible and what is not edible, you're the gardener. You turn into Neo and Trinity combined with your oracle information all on deck, right? There's a book by Dawood Bey called Seeing Deeply, and that's what I'm getting here with this last pile. Ginkgo biloba came out. I'm not going to read that far, but actually this specific chapter, chapter 7, a little bit later does talk about Ginkgo biloba in specific. And I think if I'm not mistaken, it's about the specific attribute of a ginkgo biloba plant as well as some others like eggplant, tobacco, and I can't remember what the other one was right at the moment. Hold up. I know this is kind of cheating to jump ahead a little bit, but I do want to. It's not really cheating because it literally did mention ginkgo biloba in the same section. So, all right. Well, maybe I'm not supposed to share that part just yet. But anyway, ginkgo biloba is known to have some really deeply interesting traits about it. We'll call them traits just because I don't want to say personality of the plant. I could say personality, but I'm just saying. I'll leave that for later. The point is, remember how they were talking about the silent one, or how there was a specific plant that kept on being consumed by bumblebees, like, or bitten up by bumblebees, like bumblebees were biting all over it. That's kind of the point here. The silent one is watch the shifting shadows and be a caretaker of silence. So seeing deeply is coming from below, is understanding what this looks like to get bumped by something before you get attacked. And that's not necessarily like a bad thing in this specific reading. I think that the wolf showed its face here when you were needing to outsmart that, when you need to use your brain over like your heart space, if you're talking about discernment, when you need to use common sense instead of they just say common sense is not common. That kind of knowledge, that kind of know-how is understanding that this is a ginkgo biloba plant and then also knowing where to ascertain the information about it being edible. or about it being kind of this silently able-bodied killer if you use it in the right way, using its attributes to get ahead rather than falling behind. And it does say, believed to help improve thinking and memory. This is the plant that humans use to increase thinking and memory. And that's what they're talking about here, is a plant having memory to begin with. So if this is medicinally used for thinking and memory, just imagine what it can store within itself. It's that kind of recognition of knowledge, or recognition of depth perception, I kind of want to say. And then very last but not least, of course, is this queen energy we're going to return to. And it does reflect from the beginning of the reading, kind of putting your feelers out as an insect would. This is the green man, embrace your wildness. And the green man was a recurring theme here. I actually realized just now that in the beginning pile right there, the green maid had come out. So this is interesting because the green maid is here. Then we've got the green witch. By the way, this is Nadia Turner's deck. And the silent one. And the silent one. Okay, this one kind of looks like a bowl with the ears, or however you want to interpret it. But it's just it's about being a watcher, knowing how to watch something to a level or degree where you're able to ascertain information that might not be obvious. These are 3 green cards and 1 silent one. So this silent one is almost watching 3 different types of species take off or develop or see what their attributes might be. And being able to kind of translate that or use it to your advantage that's the point. That's what they were talking about with packs, that other kind of planetary discovery. Yeah, I'm going to save the rest of this for a different day because it does delve into orchids sex. Orchid sex. However, I do just want to say that the parsley plant was here at the bottom of the deck in reverse. Parsley is number 2. It says it comes from a Greek word meaning rock celery because it thrives on rocks and walls. So you know how they're talking about knocking down the walls of perception, and that typically it's not normal for a species to crossbreed. Like you don't really see like a cat dog combined, because that species interbreeding or crossbreeding with itself or with each other for that matter is not usually normal. However, if you see a dog and a cat living in a house together, they usually do have some type of communication. They have some kind of ability to say what they need to say. And be heard the way that they need to be heard or express themselves, I think that's most everybody. I don't think that's limited just to animals, the animal kingdom. Obviously, insects do the same thing, which I know they're technically animals too, or considered part of the animal kingdom. Humans do that, and so do plants. So, anyway, I think that's probably going to cover the reading for today. I will continue on a different day.